7 o'clock, 7 a.m., June 6th, 2025, legislative update meeting for Deschutes County proper. Anything from the commissioners? Go ahead.
Did Senate Bill 1153 actually pass? Because I know Senator Nash was incredibly concerned about it. And I was hearing from other people all over this side of the mountain that it was going to make it impactful on water and farms. Did that pass, Doug?
Not yet. I was in the work session yesterday, and they had a new amendment, which they went over in great detail, and then announced that I think they're coming back on Monday in the Senate Rules Committee. But there's a -10 amendment on Senate Bill 1153 that is posted on OLS. So I can go into that now or give the overview and talk about it within the overview, whatever you guys would like me to do.
Oh, yeah. So just a quick update for myself. It's interesting dialing into the floor sessions right now and watching it go around and around. People are very prepared. I want to thank our legislators for doing the duty of getting out there and doing this. As I say, I kind of cringe at some of the things that are passing, but that's just the political environment we're in. And but I do want to thank the legislators for doing the people's business. Yeah. Anything else introductory? If not, yeah, please proceed, Doug. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing also.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Again, Doug Riggs on behalf of the county. Happy to be here this morning. We are probably 2.5 weeks away from the end. Last week, as I mentioned, they announced sine die, which means they can post hearings and work sessions with only an hour's worth of notice. So things are moving quickly. Amendments are being posted, within 15-20 minutes of the actual beginning of the work session. In some cases during the work session, then they have to wait until that hour has passed before they can take it up. So this is the typical end of session rush. The big difference this year is that I think the Ways and Means co-chairs have gone into what I would call a state of panic. The panic is over the revenue forecast, which was down from the March revenue forecast, but was the same as the December revenue forecast. And the December revenue forecast, we all, clapped and cheered and were ecstatic because it was up. So the May forecast matches the December forecast. So I'm not sure why there's this panic about the budget, except that they don't know what the federal government will do. And the fact that two issues for the state of Oregon. One is that we've openly declared the state a sanctuary state and cities have sanctuary cities. And then the other issue is Healthier Oregon, which is the program which is funding healthcare through the Medicaid program using general fund dollars for undocumented individuals. Those two things have attracted the ire of the current federal administration. So they're worried about the future of federal money coming in. I would argue, and I'll just give you, my perspective, that they have $544 million that they are not necessarily obligated to put away in the already very large rainy day funds. And if they put money away in the rainy day funds, it's very difficult to get out because it needs not only a 3/5 vote, but it also needs either a decline in general fund dollars or a declaration of an emergency for that particular situation from the governor. So a number of people in the building and outside of the building are urging them to use some of those dollars to fund key programs like community corrections, which, as you know from this week, was basically zeroed out as far as the cost allocation study goes. So that's where we are, 2.5 weeks from the end. Big budgets have already moved. The DHS budget is going to move this morning. The Higher Education Coordinating Commission budget is going to move this morning. They have about 30 items on the agenda starting at 8:30. What they have left is the Oregon Health Authority, which is a very large budget. The Oregon Department of Transportation budget and the transportation package, which rumors are something might come out today. They still have yet to come to a conclusion on wildfire. They've got, as I mentioned, the transportation, and then the capital construction budget has not been unveiled yet, and that's the lottery bond for projects such as Core 3 that all of us are very interested in. So that's where we are in the session. I mentioned a couple of the issues, community corrections. There's a big push right now. AOC, the law enforcement agencies, AFSCME, et cetera, are making a big push to put money back into the community corrections budget at the end of session, so in a Christmas tree type of bill. And there are so many people unhappy with the cuts to early learning programs, early childhood, learning programs, cuts to state police, and cuts to community corrections just so far, that my guess is that these initial bills will underfund key areas, and they will have to make it up in that Christmas tree bill at the end of the session. That would be my guess. I think they will probably listen to many of us and use a portion of that $544 million to fill gaps. What we keep reminding them is those programs actually save money. If you don't spend the money, you end up spending more money down the road, because counties can't meet their obligations, and people coming out of incarceration don't have the services. Young people, 4, 5, and 6 don't have, places to go, safe places to go, et cetera, et cetera. So, that's a few things. Commissioner Adair mentioned Senate Bill 1153. That is the bill that imposes new procedures and review processes on water transfers. The -10 amendment, which I haven't gotten all the way through, exempts municipal organizations from that bill, because municipal organizations, including cities and counties, are already covered by many of the same conceptual environmental protections and have to meet public notice standards already for any action like transferring the location of a well or transferring the location of an intake. So municipalities are exempted, but that does still leave a lot of our partners in the basin, including irrigators and farmers and property owners, who would be covered by this bill. And there's great concern in the agricultural community. So the other thing about the amendment is that it now has a fiscal attached to it. It's $500,000. So that bill will have to go to the Ways and Means Committee. The Ways and Means Committee has been pretty skeptical about any new program that has a cost. This is a new program that has a cost. So I would assume that if it goes to Ways and Means, that will complicate the effort. Lot going on. I think I'll stop there. A lot will happen in the next 2 weeks, so do not despair. Some of the cuts we're seeing come out in the original budget. Hopefully they'll do one of two things. Either they will hopefully put money in that last bill of the session, that Christmas tree bill that is going to come out. That'll be the last bill that we pass. Or the other option is Ways and Means Committee may hold on to quite a bit of money in what they call a special purpose appropriation, or a SPA. And that gives the E-Board the opportunity to allocate those funds in the E-Board meetings, which is kind of the interim version of the Ways and Means Committee is the E-Board. And they meet quarterly, so they could meet in September, January, May, September. So they could keep back some of that money in a pot savings account and allocate that money if they were convinced that money needed to be spent on those things. So sorry for the kind of long-winded discussion. There's a lot more going on that I could touch on. Senate Bill 75, our bill, is still kind of held up, being held hostage, along with Wildfire Bill, Senate Bill 83. And I know they're working on an agreement on wildfire, because I've seen Senator Golden and others wandering through the Senate and talking to each other in hushed tones. So I know that discussions are going on, but we are not privy to those internal discussions, and probably won't know much until something's posted. So I'll stop there and take any questions.
So there's still committee meetings and floor sessions. So the committees there's still things happening at that level.
Yes, Commissioner. A lot of the committees are closed, but there's still a brand new joint committee on transportation expenditures, I think is what they're calling it. And then, of course, the Finance and Revenue Committee in both the House and Senate are still alive. And then Rules, of course, that is the last committee that will close on both sides. And then Ways and Means. And Joint Addictions is technically still open. The committees are still Other committees are holding hearings, but they just have no authority to pass bills or to consider bills. They can have informational hearings. So like the Senate Health Committee held a very interesting hearing on Medicaid and the impacts of federal decisions on Medicaid a couple days ago that I sat through, and that was fascinating to listen to and watch. But for the most part, I'd say 80% of the committees are, if you look at the agenda, it says no meeting scheduled.
Yep.
They're done.
So then transportation, one of the realities that I remember is the fact that there's just a lot of debt payments, just the historical funding packages that got put on a revenue associated with transportation is one of those gotchas that we're still paying for many years. So the transportation bill starts with all those big debt payments, Joint Transportation Investment Act, I think that kind of stuff. So just as a reminder, that's the starting point is big mortgage payments or whatever you want to think of them as.
Yeah, correct. I think that's the big holdup is the negotiators trying to figure out what is the right balance of, we traditionally have been a state where gas tax is the main revenue source. I think gas tax for some period of time will continue to be important, but are there other funding streams that could be brought to bear? And I will say there is still no announced legislative accountability package, and I'll get on my soapbox again. That is something that I think they should have come out with 2 months ago. These are the 5 things we are going to do, to be very clear. Now, the governor's put out a requirement that the department has to come up with a list of things by August or early September, but it's not clear what those things will be. So I think for legislators, they are still waiting to see what can we do to make sure that the money that they are going to vote to spend and raise is going to be spent efficiently. And that's a real difficult issue.
Doug, can you comment on the accountability study that Senator Starr ordered up, that I believe is done at this point? So that's not I'm trying to understand whether a lack of information is what's holding up this accountability package or not.
Yeah, Commissioner, good question. The study is partially done. The folks that they brought in from Colorado and Utah who presented it, who work in this field on a national basis, and both of them actually were former state directors of their departments of transportation, so they're pretty high-level folks. Had 11 recommendations. A lot of them were about streamlining the process, allowing construction managers to make decisions without running 3 steps up in the food chain. So things of that, coordinating offices, combining offices, so we don't have multiple offices doing similar things. Those are the things I think the governor and the department are in the process of trying to implement internally. Many of those recommendations I think will just be automatically applied. The report's not completely done, and it only applied to, they only had the chance to review a small handful of the major projects rather than the department as a whole. So there were no, for instance, personnel recommendations or restructuring of the director's office or things of that nature. I think what legislators are looking for is some timelines. If we give you money, we shouldn't be allocating money in 2025 and then the project doesn't get even started until 2031, and then inflation has driven up the cost. Can we allocate money in 2025 and start the project in 2027? So they're looking for those kind of timelines, those deadlines, to accelerate the process, because time is money in any project that requires labor and materials. So I think it's accountability as far as guarantee of expenditures in a timely manner, personnel decisions, and restructuring of the department. One thing that I continue to hear is that ODOT workers are almost entirely remote, and there's a push by many legislators to get them back in the office working directly.
Thank you very much. Anything else, Commissioner Chang?
Nope.
Okay. Any other department heads, hot topics, areas to focus on or advocate for? Here we go. Robert.
Good morning. Not necessarily one to advocate for. Just want to give a quick update on House Bill 3962. That was the transient lodging tax. You might remember we had that group session. Right now, the House Committee on Revenue is still meeting about that. They just put out 3 different amendments. They're on number 8, 10, and 11. Number 8 references critical infrastructure. So they kind of, when they're changing the definitions of how it can be used, it still includes public safety, but they've narrowed it down to critical infrastructure in -8. In -10, it's similar, but they expanded it to community infrastructure, which allows it to be used for recreation purposes and restrooms and some things like that. So it's still, those two are very similar, still is kind of the expanded use concept. And then they also came out with House Bill 11 or -11 amendment. And that one strips everything away, except what it does simply does. Instead of a 70-30 split, it changes it to a 30-70 split. So it switches it around. So instead of counties being able to use only 30% for general government, it allows 70% for general government purposes. It's probably not where it would end, even if they go that way, but so I just want to point out it's still in discussion. And the other 2 bills, 8 and 11 dash amendments, 8 and 10, also required counties to start reporting to the state transient lodging tax expenditures and DMOs, how the money is spent. So we'll see, starting in 2027 and every other year. So we'll see where it all ends, but there's no conclusion yet to that, but they're still working on it.
Sounds like it's swinging wildly back and forth on that right now. That's interesting.
Yeah, just a quick mention that our colleague from the City of Bend, Eric King, and the mayor, Melanie Keebler, testified on that issue recently. And Robert, thanks for bringing it up. It's still alive. It's actually surprised me that the bill is still alive, and there is a lot of interest in the legislature on this. So, there's been a big push in the building to get some consideration of a little additional flexibility. So I'm still not convinced it's going to pass, but boy, it's gotten the farthest it's ever gotten in a legislative session.
Thank you.
I'm just going to offer in one other quick perspective. I did that just reminded me. I met with Eric King last night. We did talk about that, and he was tracking it live as it was unfolding. But we also just talked about the sheltering bill, and they are very, very concerned about that. Because if that doesn't pass and funding is not available, they will just simply have to close shelters. The funding is just not there. So we just need to be aware of that.
Yeah, that's House Bill 3466, I believe, and it's something that we've been talking about the last few days. Again, there are a number of decisions that Ways and Means has made or appears to be making that will cut programs that will lead to higher costs. Community corrections I'd put at the top of that list, and there's a big push on that. I mentioned the fact that they had cut state police funding in real terms, but they've also eliminated funding for the Prosperity 10,000 program, which is what the local workforce boards have used to put over 10,000 people back to work in the last 2 years. That not only saves money from people getting off public services, but it also generates $22 million in income tax. So it's a $219 million net gain for a $35 million investment. Well, the legislature zeroed that out. That's penny wise, pound foolish. And then there are other things like this shelter thing. So that's why I get back, Nick, to the maybe this hope springs eternal thing in my head, thinking that they will recognize the error of their ways, and in an end of session bill, hopefully they'll fix some of these things. Because to be entirely honest, it reminds me a lot of the 2008, 2009, 2010 downturn, where they cut things that led to higher costs. And the most well publicized was when they cut the medically needy pharmaceutical benefit, and people stopped taking their schizophrenia medication or stopped taking their blood pressure medication, and people were dying and going into the ERs, and the state was paying 300 times as much for an individual if they'd continue their $200 a month pharmaceutical benefit. But we didn't have rainy day funds, we didn't have savings, we didn't have excess funding back then. So this is why, sorry to get on my soapbox again, this is why I cannot understand why they are not investing in these programs that help people and save money. because that's, from an economic standpoint, that doesn't make much sense. So, sorry.
Thank you. Chris Doty.
Just want a quick circle back to the transportation discussion. When we see the bill, either today or sometime this weekend, just want to remind folks that, the crux of this bill should be the maintenance and operations. That was the full focus of this effort, was to focus finally on maintenance and operations. Of course, all the discussion is centering around project delivery. All these accountability elements are with regards to project elements and the big projects in Portland area. But this is all about maintenance. And I hate for that to get lost in this discussion as we're coming down the home stretch here. As I'm driving into work today, getting tossed around by the ruts on Highway 97, and as we continue to have that discussion every winter about cuts ODOT has to make and how they're doing their winter operations. That's what this bill should be, and that's the primary part of what it will be, and I hope that doesn't get lost as we're starting to talk about the details of it. That's my soapbox.
Maintenance and operation, got it. Well, and as I think Association of Oregon Counties and the road directors, everybody's real focused on that. So I hope the legislature can get somewhere. So
Well,
is one of the concepts that this might not mature and it'll just be a structure that gets kicked 3 months down the road for special session? Is that one of the concepts?
Yeah, Commissioner, I think that is a real possibility. The closer we get to the end of the session, the closer we are to September. And so suddenly September doesn't seem like that far away. And if they can't reach agreement, I think that's exactly right. I think they could punt it to a September special session.
Commissioner Chang.
I just like to say, what Chris said is spot on. This should be, and at least from some of the early drafts, framework ideas and et cetera, seems like it will be a bill focused on, core operations and maintenance. House Bill 2017 promised a whole lot of new projects, whole lot of capital construction, neglected basic operations and maintenance, and this is the fix-it bill. And if they can deliver such a bill, I hope that we won't just passively watch to see whether the bill goes anywhere or not, but that we'll get behind it. So, I guess we don't have a board meeting until Wednesday next week, but if there's opportunities for us to put our weight behind a good transportation package, I hope that the county will be ready to do that, because this is our funding too. We desperately need that money, our 30% for counties, so that we can do our work.
Well, keep an eye on it as it's happening.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted. We're watching this morning. There was kind of a false start a couple of days ago when rumors flew around the Capitol that there was going to be a press conference with an unveiling of a transportation package, and everyone got very excited. And there was a press conference for an unveiling of a transportation package, but it was an alternative that focused from mainly the Portland area legislators focusing on doubling down on increasing transit type of operations and using climate principles. So it was a package, but it wasn't the package. So we'll keep an eye and make sure we get the package when it's released.
So yeah, Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council wants to, see the qualified entity words that would qualify direct funding as a transit operator, not a transit district, and then also, there's some advocacy for the payroll tax, and there's some proposals that might show up there for transit. So some of those things do fit our Central Oregon Tri-County area also as the COIC transit operator.
I would say that that alternative package that was, led by Senator Confam is basically a counter argument to the House Republican caucus extreme transportation package.
Right.
It seems like, it seems like they're basically just trying to create brackets so that the original framework proposed by the Transportation Committee might look like it's the middle road for everybody.
Yeah, Commissioner, that was my sense too, because you got no new taxes and no transit funding, and many new taxes and lots of transit funding. And so in the middle, hopefully we'll come up with a package that can gain, good bipartisan support. And it's going to be something that will move the needle and address the issues that you guys and Chris just mentioned. I'm hopeful.
Okay, any other topics, any other thoughts, Jen?
So I do have a question, Doug. If they add 40 cents a gallon to gas tax, who does that really, really hurt in our state? But low income people. And we already are at the top. We're not number 50 for gas prices in the nation. When you hear the gas average, it's like 3.19 and we're 3.99. So are they really going to put that much into gas tax?
I don't think the final gas tax amount will be 40 cents. And the earlier proposal I'd seen is that it starts out at a much lower number and has a possibility of going up. But until we see the final package, I don't know what the number will be. I know what they're trying to do is to reduce the impact on gas tax by spreading the impact across the transportation user interface. So EV is paying a higher cost. There was some talk about EV chargers to capture the out-of-state EV users who are recharging in the state. But I don't know. I think they're really struggling with how do you come up with an amount that Oregonians are going to be able to say, yes, we understand we need better roads. And again, Commissioner, I think it gets back to the accountability. How do people know that whatever, if it's 1 penny a gallon or 40 pennies a gallon, I think what Oregonians want to know is that if they give money to ODOT, it will be spent efficiently and quickly, and they will see progress. And so that I hope that when the package comes out, it's very clear on how those measures will be implemented.
I do have another question about the vaping bill. I saw Tom Kuhn, I believe, on Tuesday, and I just wondered if there's any update on that bill.
Yeah, that's Senate Bill 702, and it is, I believe it's in revenue, and it's scheduled for a work session on Monday, I think. So let me just double check that. I just looked that up yesterday.
Thank you.
Senate Bill 702, work session scheduled for the 11th in the Finance and Revenue Committee. So public hearing was held in May. And that has broad support from the public health community.
But then Tom said that they'd added so many amendments to it that it was actually losing what it initially set out to do. And I know the community wasn't happy with just having OLCC and Department of Revenue have it available. So that's what he was worried about.
Yeah, there are 2 amendments. There's a -8 and 11, I believe. And if Tom wants to send me any information or contact me, that would be great. I don't know which of the 2 the committee is going to adopt, but I can certainly talk to the members. I'm headed down to Salem here in a couple minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just mention one other bill that is still not, it's in Ways Means, and it's important to us. That's House Bill 3069, which of course we worked extensively on, and some amendments that we requested were incorporated by Chair Krupp. That bill is in Ways Means. It requires funding, obviously, for all the grant streams that will be rolled into a new process. And I don't believe that that's been scheduled for a work session yet. Let me just check on that. I expect it to move, but work session has been scheduled for today. So it is up for a work session in the Ways and Means Committee. So that'll be on the agenda. So that is moving. So that's good. As I said,
Chang, you want to
things
share
happen quick.
Commissioner Chang, you want to share that note you put there?
Nope. Just I did a quick search. Oregon would be middle of the pack for gas taxes at 40 cents a gallon.
Thank you.
So I will
Okay.
I'll keep you up to date. As I mentioned, I'm getting in the car here in a few minutes to head to Salem. Ways and Means has 31 bills on their agenda. There will be some very interesting discussions because community corrections is going to come up. The Prosperity 10,000 for local workforce boards being eliminated is going to come up. The DHS budget is on the agenda. That is certain to generate quite a bit of interest. So if you're looking for a really fascinating thing to watch this morning, go to OLS, flip on the Senate, the Joint Committee on Ways and Means, and there's guaranteed to be some entertainment value this morning.
I'll be at the East Cascade Workforce Consortium Board budget meeting next Tuesday or Wednesday. So yeah, the outcome of what the legislature is doing will plug right into our budget at the last moment.
Yeah, that was a very disappointing decision by the committee. Kind of baffling why you would pass up on the opportunity to save more money and generate more revenue than you currently get. Makes no sense to anyone who's ever balanced a checkbook in their life.
Well, and one of the big picture items I'm seeing, because talking to business people and getting around a little bit, I mean, it's an interesting time. You know, even somebody that's very motivated to work, just the escalation and inflation in fair environment, you really do need a good foundational salary to get ahead in the world, because obviously there's jobs available, but we're still kind of a disconnect between, just the opportunity to work hard and get paid enough to pay a mortgage, get some health care, savings plan, just the whole deal. So hopefully things are going to change here in the near future, and big federal choices coming down also. The big bill.
Yep.
Anything else? If not, thank you everybody for joining us. Thanks for what you're doing, Doug, keeping an eye on things for us. And this is the big crescendo at the end of the session. So.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a great day, everybody.